to Articulating with David Barnett. My name is Sharon Locher, and with me, as always, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. David Barnett.
Greetings and salutations.
To celebrate March, which is Women's Month, we are going to discuss some artworks that we have here in the gallery by women artists, both past and present. So to jump in, I figured, is it okay if we start with Doris Lee?
Sounds like a good idea.
Okay. We're going to start with the painting behind us actually here called Boats Among the Mangroves. And that was painted by an artist named Doris Lee. It is circa 1930s. So she was born in 1905, so this was actually early in her career. One of the things that makes her kind of unique that I discovered when doing some research is that she was creating figurative and landscape works at a time when abstractionism was beginning to be favored by the American art world. She also kind of infused a sense of humor into a lot of her work, and she did not shy away from commercial projects, which was something that was also not terribly popular with artists of the time. According to Barbara Jones of the Westmoreland Museum of Art and Melissa Wolfe of the St. Louis Museum of Art, these 3 points that I just mentioned contributed to Lee kind of being lost to art history for many decades. She was kind of forgotten about despite her popularity when she was alive. And like many women artists in art history, it really hasn't been until the last few years that many of them are kind of being rediscovered or really just discovered and appreciated for the first time, because many of them kind of were lost in the shuffle, you know, when compared to their male colleagues. So one of the things I love about Doris Lee, of course, as you can see here, is there's this wonderful simplicity to her artwork. And I think this painting in particular, it's a watercolor and gouache, is a great example of that kind of simplicity that she conveys and portrays in her artwork. At the same time, and I'm curious to see what you think of this, David, to me there's also something slightly sinister about the scene. I don't know if it's like the clouds, they're kind of these smudged like clouds. You know, you've got the boats, of course, but then you have this truck that's, you know, halfway submerged in the water. And then you also have this cross that kind of pulls in your attention, and then, you know, all these branches that are kind of broken and in and out of the water. I just feel like there's something going on there. You know, every time I look at this painting, I'm kind of more and more intrigued by it. So I'm curious to see what you think.
Well, when I bought this in New York, I went into a gallery on 57th Street, and they had a whole major exhibition of her paintings.
Okay.
And I didn't, you know, really know that much about the work, but I saw about 50 of her paintings.
Oh, wow.
And I spent about 3 hours looking at the exhibition, and I wanted to buy, you know, one major painting, and so this is the one I bought.
You picked, I would say, this is my favorite. One of my favorite paintings in the gallery, but of all of her work I've seen, this hands down is my favorite.
Well, I never thought about it as sinister, but I can see your point. I mean, the black clouds.
Yes.
You know, so at the same time, of course, the mangroves in Florida, I mean, there's a lot of problems there, you know, environmentally and so on. So she may actually be commenting on that as well, you know.
That's a very good point, especially with all the stuff kind of floating in the water, you know, people, you know, just driving their truck out in there and leaving it, or, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you have a boat there that's moored up to, and there's another boat over there.
Yeah,
that's
the one in
moored.
the back here.
You've got the birds and all over, and I mean the colors too, symbolically. You
Yes.
know, basically black, white, and blue and gray.
It is. It's a very
Powerful.
sparse color palette. Very,
Yeah.
Again, that simplicity. There's not a lot of depth or shading, but it's still, I think, powerful in
For
a
me,
very unique way.
for me, I mean, I'm just adding this in on my own, but I'm thinking she's concerned about the environment.
Okay. That's interesting because that never even occurred to me. But I think you bring up a really good point. I think
That's
you're right.
why we're so good together.
Well, yeah. I mean, one set of eyes is going to view something different from another set of eyes. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and of course, with the development in Florida.
Sure.
And so on and so forth.
Oh yes, which has boomed,
and
especially
destruction
since
of
the
a lot
30s.
of the mangroves and
Yeah.
and the
The
waterways.
loss of these beautiful natural resources, and
Yeah.
yeah.
So one of the other interesting things about Doris Lee is that aside from living in Chicago and then Florida in the wintertime, she and her husband were very close friends of Sally and Milton Avery.
Oh really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, they're friends.
Okay.
And of course, with all the things we've done with Milton Avery's work over the years, so that interested me too, in terms of her work.
And I can understand why. For those of you that do not know, David, well, I'll let you tell a little bit about your connection with Milton Avery, but
Well, that's a long story.
that's a long story. But I guess, long story short, you were one of the largest dealers of Avery's
at one
work.
time, we were actually
one
the
time.
largest dealer in the world of Milton Avery's works. Yeah.
Which that in itself is pretty impressive. I mean, Avery's a very well-known artist, and the art museum here has a few of his paintings.
In the Bradley collection, correct?
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So that's our beautiful Doris Lee. Moving on, thought we could kind of jump into Sylvia Spicuzza.
Okay.
Which, if you want to kind of jump into that and let everyone
Sure.
know a little bit about
So
her, since
Sylvia
you have a personal
Spicuzza
connection.
was the daughter of the prominent Milwaukee painter Francesco Spicuzza.
Yes.
And Sylvia was the art teacher at Lake Bluff Grade School in Shorewood. And so she was my art teacher from kindergarten through 6th grade. And so Sylvia was married in 1928 and divorced in 1933. She didn't have any children, but I was sort of the son that she never had.
Yes, the two of you were
We
very
remained
close,
close.
and remained close.
Yeah, her whole life until she passed away in 1997 at the age of 90.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we acquired probably over 200 of her artworks.
She left behind a prolific body of work.
Yeah. Yeah. So when she passed away, her lawyer called me and said, "Get over to the house and pick up the artworks for safekeeping." And I said, "Well, can you send me a list of what they're?" And he said, "Well, there's no list." And I said, "Well, can you give me an approximation how many pieces?" And he said he had no idea. I said, "Well, guess." So he said maybe 25 pieces. Well, after 3 weeks, we hauled over 900 artworks out of that house.
I was going to say, it's a little more than 25.
It took us almost 3 months to inventory everything.
Yeah, to go through and document it all. And
Yeah. So then I worked with the director of the Lee Block Museum at Northwestern University because she got her teaching certification at the School of Education at Northwestern in the 1940s. And so in her will, she left almost everything to Northwestern. But there were no stipulations in the will as to what would happen to the artwork. And so we stored them here for over a year. And then I was working with, as I said, the director of the Lee Block Museum for almost a year. And together we were planning on doing a number of exhibitions and major catalogs and so on. Well, all of a sudden he left for the East Coast, and then the Northwestern decided that they really weren't interested in her work or her father's work. They just wanted the money.
That's too
And
bad.
so they hired a household liquidation place on 90th and Center and liquidated everything. And starting on a Friday, I didn't get over there till a Sunday. I couldn't get over there, but I went over there and bought as much as I could, you know. And then so we've framed up a lot of the works, and we've done a number of shows to preserve her legacy. And so we have several pieces here today that we can talk about.
Yes, and one of the things I find really interesting about Sylvia's work is she really doesn't shy away from any different medium or subject matter. You know, she covers abstraction, she covers representational arts, things that are more realistic. And, well, we have a few right here.
Yeah.
This one.
Yeah, tremendous diversity in her work, and she's
Yes.
very talented, whatever she did.
Incredibly diverse. This piece here, which is two women bathers, and this was done with colored crayon. And this one, as well, is roughly from the 1940s to 50s is the time period. So we're looking a little later than Doris Lee. A lot of just really wonderful organic lines and shapes. And, you know, there's a little bit of that representational. Obviously, you see the female forms here and here. But they're these abstracted figures.
Of course, she was influenced by her father, who was famous for doing Lake Michigan beach scenes.
Yes.
So here you have the bay there.
Yeah, you've got the lake in the background there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a sweet little piece. I really love that one. And I love the color palette too. These purples, the magentas, blues, and greens. You know, for a smaller piece, it does catch your eye.
It has a big presence
It
for
does.
a small piece.
It does. Beautifully said. I like that.
I've had a lot of practice.
Another one of her works, one of her paintings over here on Wisconsin, which, as you can see, there's a little state of Wisconsin in the corner there. That one's circa 1950. This, of course, is an oil painting. This one I find interesting. I kind of see a little bit of fauvism in there. Almost like tiny little bit of cubism, you know, with the profiles and the division of the faces. So again, we're getting those kind of abstracted figures, but just represented in a different way than the bathers.
Yeah, this painting has always intrigued me, the mystery of it. You
Yes.
know, how did you come up with this? You know, was this done for a project or a competition? You know, with the state of Wisconsin there? You know, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've kind of wondered the same thing too, because you have these different shapes. You've got the two females, and then, you know, kind of almost this hidden in the corner there is the little shape of the state. So I do wonder, you know, what the story is behind that. It is a little bit of a mystery.
Very intriguing.
Yeah, it really is. And it's a nice, I think, example of one of her larger pieces too.
Yeah.
And the other piece we have down here, which is titled Art Deco, for obvious reasons, has that, this is a watercolor. And again, abstract, but rendered in that Art Deco kind of style. You know, and she does use a lot of these organic curved lines and forms. These pieces always make me think of olives.
Well, that makes me think of martinis.
Yes, they look like the perfect olive for a martini. So, I don't know if that's what she was trying to do, but that's the first thing I always think of. Mm-hmm. And something too here, this little piece here makes me think a little bit of a peacock.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of that peacock feather.
Yeah, and then these shapes here, it's like waves on the water, and this could be like a sail.
Oh, yes, I see what you're saying.
A sailboat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of, it's fun. There's a lot of ways of interpreting this piece. And again, a unique color palette. That's the one thing about her, is she doesn't, as I think I mentioned earlier, and you said too, her work is so diverse. You know, she'll work in these darker colors here, or she'll work in something very bright. And she always just brings something really unique and different.
Expect the unexpected.
Yes, absolutely.
You never know what she's going to come up with.
Yep. And of course, last but not least, another watercolor, biomorphic abstraction. This one from the 1960s, so something a little later. And again, those organic lines and shapes.
This one reminds me so much of Georgia O'Keeffe's watercolors that Georgia O'Keeffe did in the 19s. And,
that is, you know, I never thought about that before. You're right, it does.
Very similar.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it could be some sort of landscape of sorts, or it's, again, just completely non-representational and just pure abstraction. It's kind of like left up to the viewer to decide and interpret how they see fit.
Yeah.
Which,
a lot of her work has a lot of mystery to it.
yeah.
And like you're saying, you could interpret it in any number of ways.
Yeah.
Which, of course, to me signifies a really excellent work of art, because it draws you in, and you can use your own imagination and ideas. And
I think you bring up a good point there. I think for a lot of people that are intimidated by art, because I've had, you know, people come into the gallery here just over the years when they ask, oh, what did you study in school? I tell them art history. I think a lot of people are intrigued by it, but they're also afraid that somehow they're going to get it wrong. And so I always let people know that, you know, there's no
wrong way.
Wrong way. That's what's so wonderful about art, as it's really what it brings out, that feeling, that response that it invokes in the viewer. And it can be something totally personal, or something, you know, that you've never seen before, something you may see every day. That's what I love about it. And art is, it doesn't fit into a box. It's ever changing, ever evolving. All right. Well, last, but definitely not least, we have Deidre Schanen, and she is a
Wisconsin artist.
Who
grew up in Port Washington. Her grandparents founded the newspaper up there.
Oh, really?
Yep. And so she grew up on the lake, and so all her paintings are her own feelings and visualization of looking at Lake Michigan, in different kinds of atmospheres and different seasons, different times of day and night.
Which again makes sense. Before we started filming, David and I were discussing some of her painting, and I said it kind of reminded me of landscapes, you know, just broken down into these purest, simplest forms in this kind of it's not objective, sometimes a little bit abstract, expressionist. It kind of varies. But I definitely have always sensed that landscape feeling and energy coming off of her canvases. And earlier today, I was just thinking, there's another artist, he's a male artist named Ronnie Landfield, who also paints and does these beautiful abstracted landscapes and brighter colors that are really playful and childlike, usually large canvases. And so I was thinking, wow, that's kind of interesting that Deidre Schanen does kind of the same thing, but in a totally different sense. They're both playing with this abstract landscape idea, but presenting it in totally different ways. And as we were going over some of the research, we find out that Deidre Schanen studied with Ronnie Landfield at the Art Students League. So I just thought, oh, how cool is that?
Yeah, one of the most prestigious art institutions in New York.
Yes. I mean, anybody in art history, some of the most well-known artists, that's where they studied. So here we have a couple of her pieces. The larger one is So Runs the Story. That's from 2020. That's an oil on canvas. And when I look at this, I see that what you were talking about before, the water, the sky, but there's also almost an impressionistic element to it. I feel like if I was looking at it from further away, it's almost reminiscent of some of Monet's water lilies. That just occurred to me when we first started talking about it. But broken down to an even more abstract level than Monet did. But there's definitely that impressionist feel of the plays of light and these wonderful brush strokes. It's very calming to look at. I find her paintings these kind of wonderful bucolic scenes.
Next.
Yes, and the smaller piece here is Degrees of Change So Small. That's from 2021. And that too is another oil on canvas. And again, that landscape. I almost feel like, in the foreground with the pinks and the yellow and orange, there's your ground, and the darker colors are either representing a sort of horizon line or a really muted mountain range. And I love the upper left corner, the way she's kind of, you can visibly see the brush strokes there and the movement of them. Because I imagine this would have been a hard painting to do. It would have been really easy for those colors to kind of get muddied and lost. But she had I think it seems to me that she had a very good sense of control on the color and was able to keep that from happening. But we do have several of her paintings in the gallery as well.
A lot of very large paintings too.
Yes. These are actually some of her smaller ones, but we do have many large ones, and again, in various color palettes. Some are a little brighter, some are a little more muted.
Yeah, people can check the website.
Yes, anything that you see here that we talk about is always available on the gallery's website, or if there's something that anyone wants to come and see in person, if we don't have it on the walls, you just ask and we'll pull it out of storage.
That's the ideal thing. Come to the gallery and see them.
Yes, absolutely.
In
Come
real
to the gallery
time.
and see them in real time, because I think being able to see art in person it's
Right.
again, it's a totally different experience than watching it, on a video
Yeah.
or seeing it through a photograph.
Hmm.
So these are just a few of some of the beautiful artworks we have here in the gallery by female artists, both past and present. As always, we thank you for tuning in and joining us.
Thanks for listening, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, see you in the gallery.